Sorry, Marla.
Okay. This is Senate Appropriations, and we are taking up a bill that's been referred to us because it carries an appropriation, and that is S9. S9. Oh, jeez, why did I get S9? Wishful thinking. S5. So our first witness, and then is because of timing, we have Commissioner Tierney, who is here making herself available, and her time is limited because of another appointment. And then we're going to move to having the chair, vice chair, and the legislative council come in at 3 to sort of give us more of a summary of the bill. So thank you, Commissioner Tierney, for being so flexible in terms of your schedule. We really need to understand what you're requesting and what maybe you still need that isn't in the bill as it has come to us. And one of the things I want to ask you about, and that is there funding for what has a number of people have called up the potential study? Is that in the bill and described as something other than that, or is in fact, which we have been told, and I've been told by several individuals, is really key work to help inform the development of any rules or program design? So it would be very helpful if you could address that. And would that potential study fall within your responsibility to undertake? So those are just where we want to start from while we have you here.
All right, Madam Chair, and I do apologize that I'm not able to make myself more available to the committee. We're all doing the very best we can. In a nutshell, the S5 that I have reviewed does not contain adequate resources for the department. The addition of the potential study is something that I see as a favorable improvement over the last version of the Clean Heat Standard that you dealt with last year, because the potential study is a familiar tool in the regulatory world that I inhabit, and it at least helps us get at the potential cost of implementation and also the potential impacts on folks. I would analogize to ratepayers. It also would help add some realism, and maybe what I mean is pragmatism and realism to the expectations as to what is feasible to achieve in the timeframes before us. If you will recall, when the department put out the Comprehensive Energy Plan in 2021, our recommendation was that the Clean Heat Standard be studied as a potential policy to advance the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals. That was a very carefully chosen phrase because study to me implied a PUC process where there would be workshops and an exchange of information and perspectives to include a potential study, which would have made a lot of sense. But these are details that never got fleshed out in the last version of the Clean Heat Standard, and quite frankly are coming toward the rushed closure of the deliberations in your side of the legislature on S5. But it's good to see it there. Very briefly, for the committee's help, if it's helpful to you, a potential study is a tool that we've used in the efficiency world in order to determine the budgets that efficiency utilities like Efficiency Vermont have then in turn been given to do their work. So it's descriptive in nature. One studies the world of what is out there, what kind of activities could be done, and at what cost, in order to further the aims of the efficiency program. So the idea is to take that and adapt it to the world of thermal activity in the framework of the Clean Heat Standard. And I would point out that that process of adaptation is new. It is, I think, feasible, but it is going to require breaking some new ground. And so my estimate is that the cost for that, along with the rulemaking and the like before the PUC, but just alone on the potential study is about $250,000. After that, in order for a potential study framework,
250?
yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to continue or do you have a question?
No, I couldn't hear I wanted to make sure I heard the amount that you were suggesting. Since
I will go over them again, but that was $250,000 to break the ground on a potential study and the attendant framework for that. Because a potential study in the abstract is one thing, but a potential study that is used as the foundation for future program implementation, which includes the activities of verification, for instance, which is what the department typically does in the energy efficiency context, meaning a vendor claims or an efficiency utility claims to have realized a certain amount of savings from a given program or activity, that has to be verified objectively to ensure that that's indeed the case. I would envision something similar would have to be done if you had a potential study framework in administering the clean heat standard. That would be an additional annual expense of $200,000 a year at the department. And then on top of that 250 and the 200 I just mentioned, my estimate is it will be another $450,000 to fund the 2 analyst staffing positions as well as an attorney to do this work. So the total would be 850,000.
850. So how much is so you need an additional 250 over what's in the bill as it was passed out?
My memory, ma'am, is that what was passed out is 400,000. I'm not sure. Forgive me. I simply didn't have.
It was all right.
Yeah, last year was 600,000. This $200,000 haircut, I don't know what went into that thinking, but to be frank, it's inadequate. To do this right and to do it well is going to take $850,000, and the staffing funding and the $200,000 for subsequent administration and verification those are recurring expenditures, meaning that's nothing I'm in a position to fund out of the existing revenue stream that the department realizes from fees and the gross receipts tax. Would it be helpful? Yes, ma'am.
Senator Starr's got his hand up.
Yes, sir.
June, 250, 200, 450. Those are the numbers. That's 900,000.
She said 850 total.
Yeah, she said 850, but you add the numbers up and they come to 9.
No, they had 400,000 in the bill that came over.
Oh, take away that.
Yeah. So they need, they got 400, and so there's 200 and then 250, I guess, to get us to the 850.
Yes, another way to look at it is the bill itself. Senator Starr provided, I think, 400,000 for some total funding for the department for S5. I would have said at a minimum that should have been 450,000 just to cover the staffing. Now with the addition of the feasibility study, I'm saying that the study itself to break the ground on it would be 250,000 and then an additional 200,000 for a grand total of $850,000.
6, 7.
Okay, thank you. You got it added up, Senator Starr?
No, I'm still coming to knowledge.
It's just the difference between the 400 that's in the bill and the 450.
Yeah,
She's saying it's
400.
in the 400 should have been 450.
Yeah. And to go with the additional 450, so that gets you. All right, thank you.
Is it helpful if I continue with
Yes,
explaining what a potential study is?
We just wanted to make sure we got the figures right and what's in the bill as it's been sent to us and what you feel needs to be done to support the necessary analytical and whatever we want to call it. This is something new. I've never heard of the term potential study until last week, but now I'm an expert.
Well, let me go over that briefly because I've been known to say in more than one conversation that it's an unfortunate term for what you're trying to do here, but it is the term of art in the field. So as I was saying, the discipline of regulating energy efficiency and supervising it and assessing the energy efficiency charge so that the energy efficiency utility is adequately funded to do its work, that is all well worn at this point. And this potential study is the tool that we use to determine what the realm is of possible savings, meaning potential, that a well-run energy efficiency utility could realize in a calendar year for which its budget is set. And within that budget, of course, you have a variety of metrics and standards that are applied to exact the performance from the energy efficiency utility that you're looking to get from them, so that you in fact save the energy, if you will, or realize the energy efficiency goals that have been agreed upon through the PUC process, the foundation of which is the energy efficiency potential study. So what we're doing here, or better said, the person who introduced this into the clean heat realm is analogizing and saying, well, we can adapt that tool to the realm of thermal sector regulation in order to achieve greenhouse gas reductions. So you're looking to ascertain what is actually possible. What's the potential for greenhouse gas reductions in a measured period of time? Familiarly, that would be 1 year. And you do that by conducting such a study. And typically, it's not just that you do a study, it's that the proponents of certain goals will do a study. An entity such as the Public Service Department, which is advocating for the public, will do its independent study, and then those study results are matched against each other and proffered to the PUC, who then makes an adjudication as to what the actual adjudicated potential is for savings in a given year and at what cost and paid by whom. That's typically how energy efficiency regulation works, and the idea is to take that and bring it into the clean heat standard realm. So one of the things that S5 does is it moves past something that had been an open question in my mind, which was, should we adapt this tool to that purpose? What S5 does is says, yes, we're going to do that. So if that's the route that you're going to go down, then the question becomes, how do you adapt it to the thermal sector? And to be honest with you, that is a question that needs to be answered, and that's what the $250,000 would get you. Now, if you did a potential study, you are basically laying the foundation for crafting what I would hope would be good policy in the realm of the clean heat standard. In my opinion, that good foundation is not present. We have done an awful lot of work so far in roughing out what we think it ought to look like, but the process, in my opinion, has not been sufficiently robust, or there hasn't been enough time and robust outreach to where I can, in good conscience, say to you, the foundation has been laid for this regulatory framework that's going to be implemented, which is why I would urge you to have a check back mechanism, as you did last year, but not on a final rule produced by the PUC, but rather on a final proposal from them that you can vet as legislators and sign off on as you see fit. You would be doing that in the context of having at your disposal the results of a potential study, which first would examine what is technically achievable. Now, that's without any limitations on whether it's cost effective or workforce. It's just a simple question. What is technically feasible in terms of thermal sector reductions? A good potential study will then go to the question, once you've answered what is technically possible, what within the identified items that are technically possible is cost effective, what's economic, and in turn, what kind of test. Now, typically in the energy efficiency realm, one of the tests we apply is a cost benefit test, or ratepayer impact test, or avoided cost test. These are all very familiar economic analyses that would be applied specifically to what has been identified as technically feasible under the potential study. And then finally, you would move to the third point, which is what is achievable through a program. Now that you've identified what is technically feasible and what is cost effective among those feasible options, what kinds of programs can you design, and what are the realistic limitations that attend whether it is achievable through programs to get those things done, such as workforce limitations or the ability to ramp up limitations. I mean, now that the discourse around the clean heat standard or the affordable heat standard is tapering, which is what I would observe after now 3 years of conversation about this. What is tapering to is real points that we're all having to deal with in many different policy areas right now, and that is the limitations on what our workforce actually can do, our supply chains and the like. These are real things. And one of the reasons why I'm strongly recommending to you that you not have a mechanism where the legislature is signing off on a final rule from the PUC is that the way the S5 is structured now, if I understand it correctly, is that the PUC will have a firm mandate to devise a final rule that is that has annual clean heat standard measures in it that are designed to achieve carbon reductions that are consistent with the Global Warming Solutions Act. That act has a timeline specified in it. And the way S5 is written, the PUC is directed to come up with a rule that will achieve those things in the Global Warming Solutions Act timeline. And that leaves the PUC with no discretion to actually look at the results of a potential study and to say, is that technically feasible? And I think that the tradition of good public policy in the state is such that the legislature typically develops that record first, or has an agency develop that record first, and then passes a law that says, here's what we now know to be technically feasible, at what cost and achievable, and here's what we direct to be implemented. So I am very concerned about the constraints that are being placed on the PUC to design policy with that kind of discretion. It's, as far as I can tell, they're not going to have it. And as far as I can tell, absent a check back from the legislature on something other than a final rule, which has gone through that quasi-legislative process you're not going to have a good nexus between what is ordained by the Global Warming Solutions Act and what has been ascertained to be feasible. And I think that with more, I think the legislature has a very difficult decision. It either has to delegate this to the expert agency to shape into a policy and to devise the mechanisms of implementation, or it needs to simply give direction. I think this is the gist of Senator McCormack's comments in Senate Natural Resources, where he says the legislature sets policy and then the agencies design the program, the PUC figures it out. S5 doesn't give the PUC enough discretion, in my opinion. And S5 would need to be less directive in order to meet the description that Senator McCormack has given you. So I hope these thoughts are helpful to you.
Well, let me ask, Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
It seems like the potential study it's a standard within the energy field. But did you request this? No.
We did not.
You did not request it.
We did not. As I was saying at the outset, ma'am, if we had had the process I had envisioned when we issued the comprehensive energy plan, this is something that I might well have proposed as the department's contribution to the thought process before the PUC. But that would have been in a context where we would have been able to, to frame out what adaptation of this tool looks like and so forth. But in the context of S5, no, ma'am, this is not something we've suggested.
So it is in there, the potential study?
To my knowledge, it is, yes. In
It
S5.
is, but there's no funding for it?
There's no funding.
So that's the issue then. The need for it was recognized in the bill, but nothing was correct. All right. So what you're saying is, without the money to go behind, to go with that, is the problem here.
Yeah, in terms of executing, that's correct. What I'm also critiquing is the what I understand to be the pathway in S5, which is that a final administrative rule is supposed to come back to you folks for a vote. And what I'm saying is that's not the check back I would recommend to you.
Well, obviously, that's something this committee will be discussing.
Yes.
Discussed
Well,
last year as well.
Well, Madam Chair, given your background as a former secretary of a major agency, I would just urge you to consider what it would have been like for your agency to devote the time and resources to promulgating a very detailed rule that is final under the processes of the Administrative Procedures Act, and to then have added on to that a second review by the legislature. Among other things, the complications that are raised by that are what happens if the PUC has determined that it needs to change that rule in the course of administering the program. The path being taken here suggests that they're going to have to go through this same engagement process in the legislature over a future clean heat standard. And I've not seen a compelling reason why the Administrative Procedures Act process is being upended for this particular program, when what it's really about is ensuring that the comprehensive legislative body is on record for taking the action to authorize the clean heat standard.
Could you, for those of us who are not at all experienced in the energy field, the term clean heat standard, is there a definition that goes with it? In my mind, what we're trying to do is put forth a plan or a path to reduce thermal carbon emissions.
That's correct.
Where the terminology of standard or, and then of course affordable has been a topic of discussion, because what's affordable and for whom and how. So what is there such a, within energy nomenclature, is there something that just like a potential study means something? What is a clean heat standard? Is there a definition that goes with that?
So I would say that if there were an academic degree program for somebody to study energy law, and if they were to look for the term clean heat standard, I don't think they would find it as a term that describes anything in the discipline in any objective way, the way you might say anatomy or good health standard or good hygiene. But you would find plenty of literature that would help you understand what the people who use that term mean by it. Fundamentally, it means to decarbonize the means of heating, or to decarbonize thermal means, if you will. So the affordable heat, I don't know where that nomenclature came from, but it happens all the time in legislative processes that people assign titles to things in order to capture the essence of it. If I refer to the clean heat standard, it's simply because that's what I'm accustomed to using, because I don't see an appreciable difference between S5 and the piece of legislation that we were discussing last year. And certainly clean heat standard is the term that my department used in the comprehensive energy plan, on the theory that it would have sufficient name recognition among the folks who typically refer to such plans. But I can't say that there's a legal definition, if you will, of clean heat standard, if that helps you.
Thank you. Senator Gersten.
Yeah, Commissioner, I just thought it might be helpful if you talked about renewable portfolio standards and how that term is used there and how it might be used in a standard.
So that goes to yet a different part of the nomenclature, the use of the term standard. And I dare say that Black's Law Dictionary would have a definition of the word. And to me, what that connotes is that there's been a statement of a level of something, or a degree of something, or a value of something, a standard that has to be achieved. And if you achieve that standard, you have passed go and collected $200 or whatever the attendant reward or license is. And if you fail to meet that standard, then typically there are consequences that attach. In the realm of the renewable energy standard, for instance, utilities are obliged to have a certain amount of renewable energy in their portfolio. That obligation and the certain amount are statutorily determined. And if the utility fails to meet that standard, then they are either required to make an alternative payment. Well, they're required to make an alternative payment. I was going to say either, but I forgot that if they've met the standard, they're good to go. So in other words, compliance, meeting the performance that's laid out in the standard is good. And if you can't do it, then you have to make an alternative payment. So I hope that helps. These are words that have become very familiar to people who work in this area. And I don't think there's any particular meaning that attaches to the word standard itself. The existence of such standards, whether it's about renewability of energy or if it's about the quality of heat, meaning in the thermal sector, that is what has typically become important to people when they use the term standard.
Senator Starr has a question, and then I realize you have to leave at 3, so I want to respect.
Thank you.
I was wondering, Commissioner, you must have testified in natural resources, and if you did you give them the same testimony that you just gave us?
So Senator Starr, I did testify early on in the session about my department generally, and I did flag my concern as a general matter that if additional responsibilities are assigned to the department, that the department's capacity is such at this point that there must be new resources that come with them. I did not specifically personally testify on S5. I did send my senior policy analysts and leadership in to testify on these issues on the theory that it would be more productive to the committee members to hear from the folks who actually do this kind of work. I do not believe, however, and I'll have to check back with my staff, I do not believe they have testified to any length about the potential study. This was, I think, a late development in the bill, and I don't have clear recollection about that.
Thank you. Thank you. I realize you have to run to an appointment, so don't want to make you late. So,
I appreciate that.
thank you. And who is the staff person then from your department who would have been?
My recommendation is that you speak with either Director Bailey, Melissa Bailey, who's the Director of Energy Resources and Efficiency. She is the person who heads up the staff that does all of the energy efficiency potential studies, verification work, proceedings before the PUC. Speaking with Director Poor can also be fruitful. He is presently the Regulated Utility Planning Director, but he was the immediate predecessor to Director Bailey. So he would have been on the case last year when we were discussing the clean heat standard. Both are very knowledgeable in this area.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your flexibility and making yourself available on such short notice.
My pleasure. I'm happy to help, and I appreciate the consideration the committee is giving to the resources that the department needs. And I hope you all stay safe today in your own commutes home.
Oh, thank you. I guess it's starting to snow again.
Indeed. Bye-bye.
Bye. So we are now going to sort of go through just a description of what we're doing is obviously addressing a couple of things, one of which is the funding that's requested, the positions that are requested, what additional resources that need to go. We've had some testimony that there's a reference in there about the potential study, and but the fact that we need to put some money with it, and the important role that potential study will play to inform future work and program design. So Ellen, and we have both the chair and the vice chair of the Natural Resources here. I don't know how you want to proceed, if you want Ellen to run through or you want to open it up, Senator Bray. I'll leave it up to you. And of course, you have your vice chair, and we thought it would be a nice experience for the vice chair to come in and see how the bills progress from one committee to another. So you're welcome to go down with
Great, thank you.
So I think in order to, because I had a lot of discussion about the bill already, and I'm happy to walk through, but I think probably what will be most useful in my estimation is to just stay at a high level.
I think Ellen's trying to crawl into the file cabinet.
I just didn't want to be directly behind him, that's all.
Oh, I think I'm to crawl into those file cabinets.
I don't know, should I also?
No,
just say
no,
that?
no.
Okay, I
It's
wanted to be in everyone's eyesight in case anyone wanted to
fine. Okay, that's helpful.
see me, yes.
Together an outline, just a very brief outline of the bill, just that it's a little easier to navigate. And I've also, and within it, and I'll get to what I've inserted and highlighted, but because of the recent events where a lot of people are concerned about the bill, and particularly its affordability, I wanted to just get to some basics right from the very beginning, if I could, Madam Chair, and that is, one, I think that there has been a lot of information communicated. I don't know if you want to attribute it to the telephone game or something, but misinformation is getting passed along, and I think that misinformation, which my mother would have called malarkey, is worrying a lot of people.
President Biden has used that term.
Okay, well, a lot of malarkey. So the first thing is that customer participation is voluntary. No customer is required to do anything, not switch fuels, not install a heat pump, nothing. People have had the impression that they must do things, and in a matter of fact, almost immediately. Two, there are savings available for those who do participate in clean measures. 2 billion, the official estimate through the Climate Action Office, ANR, is $2 billion through 2050. But no one, just like Efficiency Vermont, is required to participate in the programs they offer. Three, if you burn oil today, you'll be able to burn oil tomorrow and all the way through 2050. We don't eliminate any fuels anymore. Four, the bill is a long-term program for a gradual transformation in the way we heat our homes and businesses. At a minimum, it runs from 2026 through 2050. So I would emphasize gradualism over the impression that some people have that this is very abrupt. Five, the
The
bill.
message has created a great deal of worry and consternation.
Yeah.
And obviously there are people that don't support the bill or have concerns about it in its current form. But some of the calls that we're getting are from senior citizens and people who are very low income or who, not wealthy, and they become very, very fearful in terms of what is going to happen to them immediately.
Right.
And I don't know at that point how we dispel that, even under the best of circumstances, because once that's out there, even our best effort to clarify it or recognize that this is kind of an iterative process in terms of, because we're kind of in the same place we were a year ago relative to what should be the legislative role and at what points in the process, what information we have, how we act. And so we have heard indirectly that you're anticipating that we will do that, and your anticipations are correct. My only point is, for anybody who's listening, it's unfortunate that that we've created that so much anxiety on the part of people who really are very very vulnerable, and that I can't afford. I can't even afford a computer. One person told me, how am I going to do all this? And so, so my only point is we've got to think about how we, proceed from here. So let's keep going. This is for our benefit, but.
Well, and so I appreciate the few minutes for doing this part as opposed to an outline or a line by line read through. I wanted to really share with the committee and read into the record, especially, I know these are all accurate facts. These are not, just opinions about the bill. So the fifth one is the bill allows fuel dealers to sell exactly the fuels they sell today, now, and all the way through 2050. We do not ban fuels of any type. 6, fuel dealers who do not import fuel into the state are not obligated. 7, opponents who tell people to oppose a bill do not disclose it. In the last 2 heating seasons, Vermonters have been billed approximately $700 million more than in the prior seasons. And that's approximately $1,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state. So when the word affordability gets floated out there, I would say the current system is the affordable system. So that's an opinion. 8, when Vermonters rely on fossil fuels, they are exporting cash out of our economy, approximately 1.5 billion per year. And out of every dollar spent on heating fuel, 83 cents leaves Vermont. And then 10, the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is not just a good idea or wise or prudent because of the damage these emissions are causing, it's also the law. If we're not making our best effort to follow the law, and I would say personally, I'm feeling like I'd be failing my oath of office. Senate Natural Resources and Energy has been entirely open to other strategies to comply with the law, but no other party outside of the legislature has offered a comprehensive alternative. So that's, I think that many of those things, I have shared some of those, not all 10 at once with people in the last several days in hallway conversations, and most people have been surprised. They didn't realize some of those aspects of the bill.
I think probably the concerns are more general and sort of a gradual transformation. But obviously there is a desire to protect lower income households and how the revenues get generated to provide the level of subsidy and what that level of subsidy would be and what would be the cost per household and how big that bread box is. So I think the issue I'm many of us are hearing is even people who have installed these, they're using obviously less fossil fuel, but they know that in this climate that isn't sufficient in most cases. So so we're, there's a concern around, and I guess maybe this gets into the timing and the extent, and yes, we have language in the law and we should try to fulfill it. But if in fact, 18 months from now, there's some question about the feasibility or, how realistic in terms of where we are, we have the ability to modify as we go along. So I don't want to start out necessarily saying that, but I think all of us would say if we get more information or with the benefit of knowing where we are 18 months from now or a year from now, we say, we need to do some recalibration here. We are able to do that. And so I think that's important to state. And so, yes, that's the law right now, but it doesn't mean in perpetuity or if, and that's where we were getting into the need, and you have reference in the bill. And the Commissioner Tierney had talked about it, and that is the value of a potential study that really helps provide the analysis and should help inform the work of the PUC. And so I think, I personally would be feeling that that's an important advanced piece of work. And if it needs funding that you haven't included, we need to, as an appropriations committee, need to evaluate adding that to what's here.
We have, so 2 things. One is just briefly that because for exactly the reasons you're talking about, there are things that I've highlighted in red. There are 4 places in the bill where we ask for information in advance of implementation of the bill in order to get exactly those questions about real affordability. And that's why, honestly, it's just disappointing to have people pronounce it unaffordable before we've ever even got that data. It feels like.
Maybe we should change the title. I'm almost saying, I like I look at it as a plan to reduce thermal carbon emissions. That's what we're,
Propose a title change that we might favor.
I'm serious because affordability is going to be so contentious and people will have different definitions of what is affordable or affordable. And then it gets into, well, what's the standard and how that's articulated. And it seems to me our goal is just like in transportation, we recognize that thermal emissions are right up here. They're kind of neck and neck right now with transportation. And that what we're trying to do is put in place strategies to help reduce those emissions as we, have put forward. So when I look at that, I said, oh, I don't know, you must love that title, but I don't love it at all, to be honest. It's become.
There was only one of many suggestions.
So
Not
Senator
wedded to it.
Starr, you have a suggestion for a title? No, don't even think about it. What's your question?
You asked me.
I'm retracting
I
my
think-
question.
Well, before we get into other areas, I would like to ask who put your last page together because,
I wrote that up today.
okay, if you say in number 3 that if you burn oil today, you'll be able to burn it until 2050 at what cost? Yeah, that's not in there.
Well, the people
There's some-
represented fuels is being banned. No fuel is banned by.
Well, that's what it should say then. Number 6, fuel dealers who do not import oil. Well, we do not have any oil wells in Vermont, so every drop of oil has to be imported to here. So, the very first statement in that one is kind of misleading.
Well, I think probably you're talking about the definition of obligated party.
Yes.
And so-
Who's obligated to participate?
So I know that, they're large like Dead River is the important, but a lot of the smaller companies actually then they distribute to the smaller companies. So I guess we need to be clear. I think we're probably talking about the companies that go to Portland and bring in the fuel but not the local entities that might be delivering it to your tank.
Well, but if you may say it like it is. Don't swap lies because it doesn't make for a clear statement. Say oil is going to have a surcharge on it if it's transported into the state. Well, it doesn't matter if I'm the little oil dealer with one pedal truck, but I have to buy it from you because you own the transport truck and you're being assessed. That means you're going to assess me, the little guy that peddles the oil to the senior citizen. So there's going to be money bumping
Well, there is.
and down, and every time you bump money,
Well,
there's always a little handling charge usually added to it. So,
Are you talking from experience?
and,
Are you talking from experience?
yeah, a little,
I bet.
And,
well, I'm worried about the word lie.
and then number 8 though, what about number 8?
Well, let's,
When
when we
we-
straight out number 6, people are being concerned about who are obligated parties. The obligated party is any party that owns title to the fuel when they bring it into the state. Could be a wholesaler. So if I go to the wholesaler, they will already have been obligated, not me, the small retailer. Now, I've also said all along, it takes money to make money, it takes money to save money. We know that there are financial implications, but some fuel dealers have said, I don't want to be part of this. And they were under the impression that every single fuel dealer became an obligated party. That's just not so.
If I could add,
Okay, we'll go to the central, and then I just want to run through, because we're not the policy committee per se. I think Senator Starr is reflecting, just like I was reflecting, that we've been the beneficiary of a lot of communications,
Yeah.
many communications and phone calls. And I even have this that was sent to me that says, paid by Vermonters on their fuel bills. So this was left from last year. And I got it modified and sent to me again this year. So I think that's what you're hearing, because this is really our first time. But I will restate, the reason we have the bill here is because of the appropriation that comes with it and the work to help answer many of the questions that I think we've all been asked, Senator Starr certainly. So I'm going to let you finish with your interrogation of the chair
Well,
relative
just
to the
have-
sheet.
And just one more, item number 8 on our list.
Yes.
You're talking about how much money is exported out of Vermont because people are buying oil, whether gas or whatever. If we all switch to electric, where do you think that money's gonna go? We have McNeil generating plant. Remember, about 5 years ago, we shut down in Vermont Yankee that we had 4-cent power coming from. That's history, gone.
I don't know, we shut it down, they closed the business because it said it was no longer financially viable.
Yeah.
After they beat Vermont in a lawsuit, 10 days later, they pulled the plug on their own.
But where do you think our electric money goes that we pay every month, our electric bill? Doesn't most of that get exported out of here?
It depends, we have 17 utilities around the state, so depending on which utility you're talking about, the money ends up in a different pocket.
But it's, if I may, my understanding is that it is a higher percentage stays in the state.
Because we have a few little
Because
generators.
we have more generating capacity in the state.
The only big one is the one over on the Connecticut River and the one in Burlington are the only real two that generate a lot of juice that we do get a little benefit out. But with this bill, and you add, for some reason, you've added in dyed diesel fuel into finding out the numbers. And I can see once this bill has passed, then we're gonna look into the rest of the fuel. And colored diesel or dyed diesel is what loggers use to skid wood from the woods. So then McNeil and the one over in Reigate is gonna be in trouble because the loggers are gonna have to charge that much more for their wood chips. So then we're gonna throw them out of the state. So, sun and wind.
Did you quickly?
There was
So
a long
I
ways
think
to go.
Obviously,
I'm done.
there are very strong views about the bill.
Sure.
And we've been the beneficiary of a tremendous campaign in terms of people expressing concerns, and legitimately so, and we should be able to understand exactly what this does. So I'm going to ask your vice chair, Senator Watson, to offer her comments or responses.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. I just wanted to also add, you mentioned electricity, but I want to make sure that we also don't forget about the loggers because heat from wood is also contemplated by this bill as well. So I think it's fair to reason that that industry might stand to benefit by increased wood for heat. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Okay, so when I install my pellet furnace, for example,
Yeah.
then,
Waiting for
well, actually,
Gas.
because there's a company down in the Newbury area, Wells.
Yes. Yes.
So, all right,
Can I share one other thing?
yes, you may.
on our list? So
Yes.
because there's concerns about potential costs and impacts, I just highlighted 4 places in the bill that are very intentionally included in order to help us be better informed before this program whatever become live. So they are highlighted in red, the default delivery agent section, which you are just taking testimony on. It requires that initial potential study and the language is there. Then under the rulemaking itself, the 2 VSA 838 rulemaking language requires, number 2, an analysis of economic impact. And then number 8, a summary of scientific information upon which the proposed rule is based. And then more belts and suspenders. There is in the equity group report to the PUC, their provisions where they report on how to protect low and moderate income Vermonters. Well, very much the people we're hearing from are the people that this bill is designed to most help, but it includes actions needed to provide customers with better service and to mitigate the fuel price impacts calculated by an earlier section of the bill. And last, there are 2 check back reports, one in 24, one in 25. And I'll just read this language because it's very much on point what we're talking about. It's to include, to the extent available, estimates of the impact of the clean heat standard on customers, including impacts on customer rates and fuel bills for participating and non-participating customers, and impacts on total spending on energy for thermal sector end uses, fossil fuel reductions, greenhouse gas emission reductions, and if possible, impacts on economic activity.
Seems to me that's really a lot of what a potential study would.
Right. So
I mean,
you may want, if you're thinking about a language to amplify or whatever, that section, section 6 sub I, check back reports may be on point for what you're thinking about.
Question that I have, and that is in the recent federal bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, there's what, 27 billion for this very initiative. I'm, as a money committee, I want to make sure that we understand what is available through that appropriation and how we can access it and how we can create a nexus with the desire to reduce thermal emissions with what seems to be a very significant federal pot of money, which is to me would help mitigate or reduce the impact that you would have to generate through another scheme to support the services to the households that need it the most. I mean, some of us can and should do it, and we would have the financial benefit, and fine. So I don't know if there's some way that we can, but I really would like to make sure that we are in our examination doing everything we can to make sure that policies that we're developing or design or whatever, that if it's at all possible, we make sure that we're maximizing Vermont's access to that very significant federal resource under that piece of legislation. So I just want to put it out. It's something that I feel I would like to make sure we have as an instruction, whether it's through the treasurer's office or or with the executive branch or both. And you don't need to worry about it. That's something that we can add. But I really need to make sure that we recognize that we shouldn't be sort of parallel, and not really taking advantage and recognizing that resource. You like that, Senator Starr likes that.
Well, yes, and it should come back to the legislature, not to some appointed board to look at and approve or disapprove.
Well, we're now into the check back.
It should come back to the legislature. And I mean, we're the ones that are elected by the people, and we're the ones that.
Well, rumor has it, Senator Starr, that our colleagues are anticipating that we will do just that.
Well.
We, as in this committee.
Yes, but you get elected. I mean, I've been being elected to something ever since I was 21. In the,
You're 32 now.
yeah, and the only people that I've ever had to answer to are the people that elected me. I didn't go, when I was on the school board, I didn't appoint a special committee to do the heavy lifting and then let them decide, oh yeah, this is a wonderful idea for you. You know, you take the if you want to be a public servant and you get elected to a job, then have the backbone to approve it or disapprove it and go and sell it to your constituents.
I think you'll find that that people would agree with your statement.
Well, in the way I know.
And some
the
of us
bill's
haven't been in
designed,
office
it
since
doesn't-
age 21 either.
Pardon?
I said some of us haven't been in office since age 21, but
Many,
got a lot of
I don't
experience
think
there.
there's many of us in the building that have been in office since age 21, so
well, you know,
and I've been elected every 2 years or every year from them, so
It's
I've
only,
been through quite a few elections.
I'm only 28, so that puts me at a real disadvantage.
so we have not kept you to your script at all, but this is and I because it's kind of the next iteration of discussion that we've had. We thought because of time, it would be helpful for the committee to have the walkthrough, have this information. You can see what people's concerns are. And we will be looking at the money and what is necessary. If we're going to go down this path, we need to fully understand what is the impact, how it would work. It seems like that's really that potential study is designed to do that and give that level of comfort and really make legislators feel that they have carried out their due diligence responsibility and something that is fairly, not fairly, is very, very new here. So Senator Perchman,
I have a question.
you may.
On you were around in 2015 when the renewable energy standard was created, which was this, we called it it's a standard, right?
Yeah.
Like other states have renewable portfolio standards. Did we talk about or require a potential study as the renewable energy standard?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I don't remember. We worked 26 committee days on that bill. I do remember that well, and in order to put that into shape, and then we passed it.
Did that have the standard on it?
No, that was separate.
That's the one that.
That is another energy program that has the word standard in it, yeah. But
I voted against that,
Oh, you
and not because I disagreed, but because at the time, I felt that the required rates that are paid by ratepayers were set too high. And so one of the things we have to struggle with is, how to be fiscally and, what our fiduciary responsibility is, because ultimately those rates, and they turned out to be too high, particularly I think for the wind generation.
it got changed to an
And it-
auction.
And it got, then it was modified. And so that's why, with the benefit of experience, but I thought out of the gate, we were setting it too high,
Was
maybe
this in
about
the-
15%.
Was this in the RES or in standard office?
Standard office.
Standard office.
And so part of what we're looking at here is obviously that economic impact. And so there are times when, and our,
Now you're a supporter of the standard offer for the Rygate. Those things have changed.
well, very small. And yes, well, I was not
Can I hand out?
totally opposed, obviously. But we have to be, my only point is
Yeah.
that we have to recognize the financial impact that any legislation may impose. And at times, if it's too unnecessarily generous, it doesn't achieve more, but it comes at a higher cost. That's all I'm attempting to say.
Sure.
So-
And you were right. They did turn up too high and we changed it
Yeah.
with better experience. But so I don't think we did a potential study for the RES, but just,
Not to the best of my recollection. The bill, we've gone through the sections in red that highlight our best effort to make sure that we are being responsible, fiduciary way.
can you stand it this thing?
And then I'm also.
This
pass
page.
out This sheet to let, help people know what's already going on. So this is 2 pages out of a request for proposal that came out of the Climate Action Office at the Agency for Natural Resources. And it is for an analysis of building/thermal energy sector emission reduction policies for
Oh, see,
Vermont.
there's the name of my bill right there.
There you go. And nothing, Hemingway said, never sell once, we can sell twice.
Chair, I have to pop back into my other action
Oh.
committee.
Be right back.
All right.
So you may want to borrow that. So by way of information though, besides the reports in there to help us figure out economic impacts, we have a real running start. Everything I highlighted in yellow is an existing study, or in the last case, a bill. We went through this last year in 715. And then in blue are the topics to be covered by the contractor that's delivering this report.
And this is underway right now by A&R. They've
Right
done.
now, Secretary Moore could tell us a detailed update of where we are in that process. But so number 4 is a sector-wide performance standard, e.g. the proposed Vermont Clean Heat Standard. And so that report, when it comes back, I think in June, will roll forward and become part of the process at the PUC. And so that will be, the 11th piece of information on this topic delivered into the process. All which is to say, I think I honestly.
Whose document is this? Is this A&R's document?
I have a complete copy.
No,
for
I
you.
just wondered, this document is
Yes.
A&R's?
This is A&R's RFP that came out of.
All right, no, that's fine. I just wanted to know.
If you want the-
No, I really don't. I
really don't.
really, I'm sure you've read it. I just was wondering whether this was something you would put together or whether it was coming from the agency. Okay, thank you.
It's from the agency.
Okay, all right, that's all I was asking.
So anyway, to the offender person's point about studies and background information, I just don't know of any other legislative initiative that started with this much analysis prior to even commencing, passing the bill and presenting it. We in the most serious and genuine way, the goal of making a necessary transition required by law, as affordable as possible for as many Vermonters as possible.
Anything else you want to add, Senator Watson?
Oh, sorry, I had to step away there
No,
a
it's
minute,
fine.
but, I guess I would encourage, the committee to think about, the obligations of the Global Warming Solutions Act as a kind of unfunded liability at this point. And so we need to address it and we need to get on the top of it. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move forward with this. So, and if you have any further questions, I am also happy to help talk through how the bill works or any questions that remain.
And Ellen, do you have anything else you want to add? I don't think we have to do a section by section. Our focus is really to make sure that if we're moving forward,
unless there's something specifically in section 7 where the money is that we need here.
I don't have anything specific, but I'm here if you have questions on some of the specific language sections, or if you want to talk about section 7, but.
Did you have a question?
Well, I didn't know, maybe Commissioner Karen said this, but when she testified earlier today, she said that they would need 850, I think is what she said, not
Yes.
400. The 400 450, she said what they needed for staffing, but to do the potential study, she said 250, and then she had another 250, which I forget what was for, but I don't know if that testimony or that your
We
committee.
did have the department in, but they didn't say that at the time. Maybe they hadn't thought through the implications of the study. Not sure why, but we always know that by the time any bill from us gets to you, people look out for their department needs and interests. And that's not surprising me that they're.
So it wasn't as though a
Revising that
request
figure.
was made and you rejected it, or, but because you actually have the reference to the,
That's actually news,
yeah.
news to me.
Yes.
So,
anything else that you had a question
No,
about?
those-
What about you, Senator Starr? You all set for today?
looks pretty happy. Looks very happy.
Oh, he's very happy.
Yeah. Thankful for the good work he's doing.
What about you, Senator Westman? Any more questions? And I know that we do have Secretary Moore here. I want to offer you an opportunity if you have any comments to make to the committee.
I would just reinforce what Senator Bray said, that we have this RFP underway. We are contracted with Energy Futures Group, and we are on track to receive their final report in June of this year. They have sort of done the literature review of the existing studies. From them, we've identified 5 specific alternatives that we are looking for them to do a more comprehensive evaluation of, and look forward to receiving their results. I think that the challenge in this space is sort of, we've got the process going on, but in some ways we've already predetermined the outcome, and that it has to meet the 2030 requirement of the Global Warming Solutions Act. And I'm not sure how these two pieces.
I don't want to necessarily give on the date. I think it's good to have an ambitious deadline, but if in fact, with the benefit of additional examination and expert advice, we have to make some adjustments. I think we have to recognize that based on past experience that sometimes has to happen. So it doesn't mean slow down the race or what needs to be done, but if it's like so many things, with the benefit of experiences we move on, you recalibrate. So, and we've done a lot of recalibrating in this room. I can assure you. Yes, Senator
I
Westman.
would just make the comment that when we talk about the look back and review and the deadlines that are in this, as someone that has had a wood furnace that I purchased, environmentally cleanest piece of equipment that I could purchase, I'm now waiting almost 20 months to install, and you can come and look at the furnace in my yard, because I haven't been able to get anybody to install it. And I'm afraid that as I look at what our community action agencies and the weatherization have done, and I spent the last 2 years on the natural resources, and we were a great deal about getting people into the business, that the ambitious nature of this, you're not going to find in front of people to be able to do the work.
Workforce is in that study that we were talking about.
That's part of the reason why I look back.
Workforce is in every single bill. It's in childcare, it's in healthcare, it's in education. It is pervasive in the trade, certainly. So,
And if I may also offer, because of the nature of the obligated parties also helping to subsidize this work, there's actually a direct connection and motivation for fuel importers to do that work themselves. And so we may see more fossil fuel importers diversifying their businesses to help provide additional workforce.
That's not going to happen.
Right, no, but the motivation
You know,
it's at least there.
As someone that just bought a piece of equipment almost 20 months ago and spent $22,000, and it's still sitting in my yard.
Yeah.
diversified to platinum.
So, committee, other questions or comments? Yes, Senator.
No,
Warren.
nothing. I'm happy to answer your question outside the
At
committee.
this point,
That's all.
are you all set? Okay, so, thank you for coming over and disrupting your schedules. We wanted to get started. Obviously, Senator Ruth is not here. Senator Sears is not feeling well, so he's not
It'd be a
here.
good day to
And
bring
Senator
one
Lyons
up.
is here. She's just meeting remotely. So I wanted you to know that this was a good opportunity for us to get the bill as it currently exists. And we'll be looking at
Sure.
the appropriations that are included in it. And our goal, just for people that are around the room or listening, would be to vote this out on Tuesday.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that this chair is a little taller than it used to be.
Well, we used to have you so your chin was on the
Yeah,
table.
I always felt like I was going to a parent
It
teacher
was-
conference.
It was design.